How did Battlestar Galactica 2004 end? It's a given thing that a majority of television shows struggle when it comes to avoiding cancellation. But that was not the case for Battlestar Galactica. Ronald D. had maintained that from the very start that the military science fiction TV series was designed to have a beginning, middle, and end. This means the show got its planned ending exactly how Moore had imagined it, and it is safe to say that the creator was not forced into a sudden cancellation compromise. The ending, as most fans of this critically acclaimed series have seen, was a 3-hour finale, which, if I may add, was also the real story. But here's the twist. A planned ending did not equate to a safe ending. In fact, the conclusion radically divided both critics and the fanbase. That's not all, it also prompted George R.R. Martin to openly criticize it. Today we are going to take a look at how one of the most popular sci-fi series ended and why years later people are still actively debating the finale. Specifically the show's sudden shift to, I'm not going to say it right away, you gotta stay tuned with me for this one. You ready for some answers? Let's dive right into the video then. Before we take a look at the reimagined reboot, let me remind you that the original Battlestar Galactica was a creation of Glenn A. Larson that ran for a single season and featured 24 thrilling episodes. Starring an ensemble cast which included Lorne Greene, Richard Hatch, and Dirk Benedict, the original TV series followed a group of humans as they fled the destruction of their homeworlds aboard the eponymous spacecraft, and looked for a new home while being hunted down by the Cylons, a cybernetic race hell-bent on wiping out all humans. Despite initially failing to garner a large audience, Battlestar Galactica eventually developed a cult following, so much so that the original TV series gave rise to a multimedia franchise and paved the way for the first part of the Battlestar Galactica remake. Here I am specifically talking about the miniseries, which in turn served as a backdoor pilot for the 2004 TV series, also titled Battlestar Galactica. Okay, so now that everyone is on the same page, let's take a quick look at the miniseries, shall we? Battlestar Galactica, the miniseries, was a 3-hour TV miniseries based on the teleplay by Glenn A. Larson, written by Ronald D. and directed by Michael Reimer. While it is true that the miniseries reimagined the classic 1978 space opera into a tense, grounded survival drama, if I'm being completely honest, the 2003 series was a lot more than just a story built around survival and the chase. Besides functioning as a political drama, it also struck a deep chord because it accurately reflected the political fear and trauma of the post-9/11 era. The nuclear surprise attack on the 12 colonies was sudden and devastating. Believe me when I say the entire thing was presented as a horrifying, visceral genocide. Just imagine this, a ragtag fleet of some 50,000 survivors being forced to confront absolute grief, terror, and the overnight collapse of their entire society. By treating the apocalyptic premise with absolute psychological weight, the 2003 Battlestar Galactica miniseries not only redefined modern television sci-fi, but it also functioned precisely as a deconstructive reboot that was built to challenge the foundational cliches, moral dilemmas, and political constraints of its 1978 predecessor. Additionally, by introducing humanoid Cylons who could look and feel human, the narrative immediately questioned identity, paranoia, and the very definition of humanity. The miniseries simply refused to offer a clean, moral high ground, ending on a rather deeply ambiguous note with Commander William Adama lying to the fleet about knowing the location of Earth, just so that he could give people a little bit of hope to cling on to for the future. Critical acclaim, real ratings. Over the course of its run, the 2004 Battlestar Galactica TV series became a recipient of 19 Primetime Emmy nominations. In fact, I don't think I'm wrong when I say that it also ended up winning 3 awards, especially in the special visual effects, sound editing, and sound mixing categories. Truth be told, much of the show's massive appeal stemmed from its phenomenal cast. Edward James Olmos as Commander William Adama, Mary McDonnell as President Laura Roslin, Katie Sackhoff as Kara Starbuck Thrace, James Callis as Dr. Gaius Baltar, and Tricia Helfer as Number 6, Caprica 6. Each one of them, besides delivering powerful performances, kept the show grounded with their emotions. As one of Sci-Fi Channel's biggest hits, Battlestar Galactica simply broke network viewership records and demonstrated that science fiction can be gritty, sophisticated, and deeply relevant, all at the same time. By handling tough topics like democracy, war, faith, and survival in a very realistic way, it redefined modern television science fiction, further setting a new bar for high-concept, serialized drama that has never been seen before. A strike that nearly stranded the fleet. When the 2007-2008 Writers Guild of America strike took place, it substantially affected Hollywood production. No points for guessing, the strike collided directly with the production of Battlestar Galactica's fourth and final season. You see, Ronald D. had originally planned a continuous 20-episode arc to bring the epic saga to a definitive close. However, when the strike began, only the first 10 episodes of the fourth season had been written and filmed. It is fitting to state that the writers were pretty much forced to put their pencils down, and they could not draft a single script for the remaining 10 episodes. Naturally, this left Sci-Fi Channel with no choice but to divide the final season into two separate broadcast blocks. Production was completely halted, leaving actors and crew stranded in limbo. If you can recall Revelations, the 10th episode of the fourth season, you will remember the survivors finally arriving at Earth only to discover that it is a burnt-out, radioactive wasteland. Anyway, what I'm trying to say here is that the strike severely threatened the series' legacy. No one knew when things would be resolved, and there was this legitimate fear that Revelations might serve as the accidental, grim series finale. Don't blame me, I thought that as well. Luckily, the strike came to an end, the writer's room reconvened, production resumed, and the cast came back to film the last 10 episodes. Although the pause did delay the series finale until March 2009, the resolution of the strike ultimately saved Battlestar Galactica from ending abruptly, thereby allowing Moore to deliver the proper, planned conclusion that he intended for his show, ending it on their own terms. Like I have mentioned before, the cancellation did not really come as a surprise. In fact, both Moore and executive producer David Icke have firmly believed that the show was always meant to have a beginning, middle, and end. In the duo's exact words, or should I say as per their joint statement in a June 2007 announcement, which was later reported by CBR, Moore and Icke said, "Over the course of the last year, the stories and the characters have been moving strongly toward that end, and we have decided to listen to those internal voices and end the show on our terms." I think it is more than safe to admit that concluding the series was a deliberate creative choice and not some network-forced cancellation. It is pretty obvious that Moore, as the showrunner, was very clear that Battlestar Galactica needed a definitive ending. Furthermore, in an exclusive interview with Screen Rant at Comic-Con, Moore disclosed that although he had some regrets about how Battlestar Galactica ended, he still would not want to see a scripted reunion special. The showrunner said, "I don't know, I said goodbye. I felt strongly at the time that I did not want to then try to put the gang back together later on. So I destroyed the Galactica, sent this fleet into the sun, landed them on Earth, and said, this is the end." Daybreak, the rescue mission. In the three-part series finale, more popularly known as Daybreak, the long-suffering crew faces their ultimate defining battle. Story-wise, Adama announces his plan to rescue Hera Agathon, the human Cylon hybrid child of Carl Hilo Agathon and Sharon Athena Agathon, from a heavily fortified Cylon base located near a black hole. Upon realizing that the rescue mission is going to be a one-way trip for the Galactica, Adama gives everybody a choice. He makes it clear that nobody should feel obligated to join the mission, and that whoever wishes to join him must do so willingly. With Adama pointing the crew at a red line drawn across the center of the deck, he asks for volunteers to step over. Several crew members choose to participate in the mission, risking everything for a child who symbolizes the future of both races, and no points for guessing, a cancer-stricken Laura Roslin joins in the operation too. The raid on the colony is raw, chaotic, and terrifyingly brutal. The attack turns into a fierce boarding party struggle as Galactica leaps straight into the superstructure of the Cylon base, and the old warship rams into the colony's hull. There are a significant number of heavy casualties on both sides as human marines and loyal Cylon Centurions battle against John Cavill's fanatical forces. Once Hera is retrieved, the fight escalates into a high-tension psychological standoff in Galactica's Combat Information Center. Cavill ends up taking Hera hostage and demands to leave with the child so as to secure the future of his species, as the Cylon resurrection technology was destroyed along with the resurrection hub. This is where Dr. Gaius Baltar, intervenes and de-escalates the whole situation with a rather inspiring speech on breaking the cycle of violence and convincing Cavill that a peaceful resolution is possible. The jump that ends the war. In order to ensure Hera's safety, the final 5 Cylons agree to pool their collective memories and rebuild resurrection technology for Cavill's faction, effectively granting them immortality in return for an enduring truce. As the final 5 link their neural pathways to transfer the resurrection data, their minds merge and they simultaneously begin to experience each other's memories and past actions. When Tori Foster's memory reveals that she killed Callie Tyrol in the past, a distraught Galen Tyrol breaks the neural link in a fit of rage and strangles Tori to death. Upon realizing that the transmission is irrevocably broken and that his race is doomed to extinction, Cavill ends up taking his own life, which, of course, has the battle plunging back into chaos. Outside the ship, the battle takes a turn for the worse. The debris field surrounding the ship causes one of the Raptors to accidentally launch a nuclear missile at the Cylon colony. This obviously has a huge impact. The nuclear strike dooms the colony to the black hole, and Galactica would have met a similar fate had Adama not ordered Kara Starbuck Thrace to jump the ship right away. Remembering Hera's musical notes of the song All Along the Watchtower, Starbuck translated it into numbers and used them as jump coordinates to execute one final, blind FTL jump, finding Earth and giving it all up. Starbuck's mysterious coordinates turn out to be a habitable world, bringing the survivors to their new home, or should I say, our very own Earth. When the rest of the fleet arrives at Earth, Lee Apollo Adama proposes a radical path forward. He advises the fleet to give up their advanced technology and simply start afresh. Samuel Anders, who is still connected to the ship's systems as a hybrid, takes control of Galactica and the remaining vessels, and steers them directly into the sun. With the ships destroyed, the humans and the Cylon survivors divide themselves into small groups and scatter all across the planet. This time not to colonize, but to blend in with the indigenous, genetically compatible, primitive early humans already inhabiting Earth. Goodbyes, Rosalind, Starbuck, and the rest. Rather than bringing the characters together for a grand group finale, Daybreak ends Battlestar Galactica by giving its core characters an intimate, bittersweet personal ending scattered all across the new world. Here, allow me to explain things to you by giving you examples. Let's start with Laura Roslin. Her battle with cancer finally comes to an end shortly after arriving on Earth. In her final moments, Adama takes her up in a raptor, and as they fly above looking for a place to build their home, Roslin dies. Adama puts his wedding ring on her finger and considers Roslin as his wife. Next, we have Kara Starbuck Thrace, and if you ask me, I think her journey ended on a rather enigmatic spiritual note. She is seen strolling across a field with Lee Adama and contemplating that her destiny is fulfilled. You know, the whole thing of how she interpreted Hera's song and guided the fleet to their new home? Lee turns his back for maybe a split second, and that's it. Starbuck simply vanishes into thin air. Then there is Galen Tyrol, who, devastated by Tori's betrayal and traumatized by the war, chooses to live out the rest of his life in absolute solitude, and settles down on a secluded island in the north, which would eventually become the Scottish Highlands. Lastly, there's the Agathon family, who surprisingly ends up having a happy reunion. The twist 150,000 years later. The epilogue shifts the narrative 150,000 years into the future, landing in modern-day New York City. Of course, there's the ultimate thematic revelation. The entire exodus of the 12 colonies did not take place in the future, but in the deep, forgotten past. There has also been a recent discovery of the remains of the woman believed to be the mitochondrial Eve in Tanzania, and no points for guessing that she is none other than Hera Agathon, the human Cylon hybrid child, or should I say, the progenitor of modern-day humanity. The series ends with the head versions of Caprica 6 and Gaius Baltar observing the modern technology and human progress, and debating if the modern humans will break or repeat their past mistakes. Why Ronald D. Moore said, "It's God," and meant it. The way Ronald D. Moore framed the conclusion of Battlestar Galactica, it certainly did not sit well with a lot of people for that matter. But having gone through Moore's extemporaneous audio commentary, particularly his interpretation of Battlestar Galactica's message, I think it's only fair that I share his exact thoughts with you. You see, Moore wanted the character of Gaius Baltar to be a player in a grander play, given that it was Baltar who started it all. Well, it makes sense that Moore wanted Baltar to realize that a higher force was at work, and that he should embrace his part in a larger scheme. To Moore, it felt fitting that the man who triggered humanity's downfall by letting the Cylons into the mainframe would be the one to take charge and guide everyone to safety. Furthermore, Moore always wanted his show to be brutal and honest. He wanted the show to talk about things that most people were reluctant to discuss, or, let's say, even put into fiction on some level. This is what made Moore feel that there was something beautiful and poetic about his show. He never wanted to end Battlestar Galactica with the notion that life is pointless. Instead, he sought to convey the sense that there is something greater, more beautiful, and that the only way to truly enjoy it is to acknowledge the ugliness, death, brutality, horror, and evil. He wanted his viewers to realize that good and evil are inextricably linked, and that one cannot exist without the other. Well, that's Moore's personal perspective of life for you. The Backlash and George R.R. Martin's verdict. There is simply no denying that when the 2004 series debuted, it had instantly swept the whole television landscape by storm. While the first 2 seasons of Battlestar Galactica earned universal praise, the 3rd and 4th seasons ended up igniting considerable controversy, especially among fans and critics, given its tilt toward mysticism, religious prophecy, and dare I disregard the contentious series finale. No wonder the final episode divided the audiences sharply, with many expressing their disappointment over unresolved plot elements and spiritual resolutions. George R.R. Martin, who otherwise was a fan of Battlestar Galactica, took to his live journal blog to openly criticize how the show ended. In a post titled Writing 101, Martin wrote, "Battlestar Galactica ends with, 'God did it.' Looks like somebody skipped Writing 101 when you learned that a deus ex machina is a crappy way to end a story." Martin laid his dissatisfaction right on the table when he also wrote, "Doesn't anybody know how to write an ending anymore?" Adding more to the criticism was Time magazine, who pointed out how ridiculous it was for such a highly developed civilization to abandon their technology and everything in order to re-establish themselves as hunter-gatherers on Earth after barely surviving a brutal war. But just like a coin having 2 sides, there were praises too. Alan Sepinwall of the Star-Ledger was pleased with the ending despite knowing that many others did not feel that way. Sepinwall said, "So the amazing 4-year journey of Battlestar Galactica comes to an end, and I feel very, very good about it, even as I suspect others may not." Mary McNamara of the Los Angeles Times also expressed her happiness about the finale. In McNamara's words, "Hard to imagine a more visually and thematically satisfying finale." Did Battlestar Galactica earn its ending? It is not often that a show's creator gets to choose when and how a show ends, but Battlestar Galactica got the rare gift of ending exactly when and how its creator wanted to. Yet, it ended up producing one of the most debated endings in the history of the genre. Those of you who have seen Daybreak know exactly how the series concluded. In case you don't, Moore framed the conclusion around spiritual surrender, the rejection of violent cycles, and a symbolic return to nature. But in all honesty, it is just how he wanted to wrap up the narrative. Well, in times like this, I do get reminded of Moore's 2013 interview with Vulture, where he explicitly said, "I think it comes from a place of passion for the show. Why get that upset about it if you don't care about it? If you weren't engaged, you could not be that angry because you thought we screwed it up." Guess that answers it all. I hate to admit it, but I am pretty much at the end of today's video. This means I do have a question for all of you. Do you honestly think a deliberate planned ending matters if a significant portion of the audience still feels deceived by the finale? I want you to really think before you answer this. Also, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with Battlestar Galactica's creator-driven, carefully thought-out ending? One that was executed exactly as planned. Please do not hesitate to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Now, if you have enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Please do leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more such videos. As for me, I promise to come back with another favorite video soon. Thanks for watching, and have a nice one.